Nobody expected the Pittsburgh Steelers to look like this in late December. Yet here they are, pushing their way toward the top of the AFC, while everyone is still arguing about whether they were finished 3 weeks ago. A team that once felt stuck in neutral suddenly has a real identity again. 19 straight non-losing seasons under Mike Tomlin sounded like a trivia line before this year, but with a 9-6 record and the division sitting right in front of them, that streak now feels like the start of something instead of the end of it. The crazy part is simple. This is not smoke and mirrors. This is a team changing who they are in real time in front of the entire league. It starts on offense, where the numbers finally match the attitude. Against Detroit, the Steelers did not just win, they took control of the game with a ground attack that ripped off over 230 rushing yards and turned every drive into a body shot. Jaylen Warren exploded for long runs, breaking tackles and forcing the Lions' defense to play on its heels. Kenneth Gainwell turned short passes into big gains and moved the chains when the run game needed a breather. Behind them, an offensive line that used to be a weekly concern has grown into a real strength, giving Aaron Rodgers clean pockets and just enough time to pick his spots. At 42, with nearly 3,000 passing yards and more playoff wins than the rest of the AFC field combined, Aaron Rodgers is no longer the desperate hope of this team. He is the steady heartbeat of an offense that finally knows exactly what it wants to be. On the other side of the ball, the turnaround is even more shocking. 3 weeks ago, this defense was getting gashed on the ground, then they walked into Detroit and held that high-powered run game to 15 rushing yards while playing without TJ Watt. The front, led by veterans like Cameron Hayward and new pieces like Derek Harmon, slammed every lane shut, while the back end tightened up with Jalen Ramsey moving all over the field and Kyle Duggar cleaning up everything in front of him. This is what happens when a proud team stops trying to survive and starts throwing first. The question now is not whether the Steelers are dangerous, but how they pulled off this switch so fast, and what it really says about Mike Tomlin and the pressure that almost cracked everything only a few weeks ago. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Steelers and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. 3 weeks ago, it looked like the Pittsburgh Steelers were finally breaking under the weight of their own standard. In a brutal loss to the Buffalo Bills, they gave up 249 rushing yards and walked off the field on the wrong side of 26-7, while their own fans screamed fire Mike Tomlin in the fourth quarter. 19 straight non-losing seasons suddenly sounded like an old story that no one cared about anymore. National shows rolled the clips on a loop, analysts leaned in, and the question hung over everything like a cloud. Had the Steelers finally reached the point where even Mike Tomlin was not enough to keep this thing from sliding backwards? What made it worse was who spoke up. When former stars like James Harrison and Ben Roethlisberger quietly suggested that maybe Mike Tomlin needed a change of scenery, it did not feel like a hot take. It felt like a gut check. This was not anger from outsiders. This was concern from people who had won with him. That is the kind of criticism that usually cracks a locker room. Instead, Mike Tomlin walked into the fire, admitted the frustration was real, and promised they would respond. No slogans, no long speech, just a simple message that hit every player in that room. You do not chant your way out of a problem. You play your way out of it. The wild part is how fast that promise turned into reality. Since that low point, the Steelers have stacked wins, cleaned up the details, and started to look like a team that actually matches the standard their head coach has carried for almost 2 decades. Fans who were ready to move on are now asking a different question. If this is what the response looks like after getting humbled in Buffalo, what happens when the offense fully leans into this new identity and the entire team starts playing to that level on purpose instead of out of anger? To answer that, we have to look at how the offense quietly rebuilt itself and why Aaron Rodgers suddenly feels like the perfect fit for the version of Pittsburgh that is forming right now. The biggest quiet change in Pittsburgh is that the offense finally looks like it belongs to a single idea instead of a mix of old habits. That starts with the big guys in front. Under Pat Meyer, the line with Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, and Zach Frazier on the inside and right side has stopped playing on its heels and started dictating. When Isaac Sumalo is healthy, he settles that left guard spot. And when he sits, Spencer Anderson steps in without panic. Andrus Peat has held up at left tackle after the injury to Broderick Jones, while Dylan Cook gives them steady snaps when called. You can see it in the way Aaron Rodgers climbs the pocket now. He is not bailing early, he is trusting the protection, sliding up, hitching once, and then firing. That trust is new, and it changes everything for how this group calls a game. Behind that line, the skill pieces have fallen into clear roles that actually fit their strengths. Jaylen Warren is not just hitting holes, he is setting up linebackers, pressing one gap and bursting into another, turning simple runs into chunk plays that flip the field. Kenneth Gainwell lines up all over, motioning out wide, slipping into the flat, leaking up the seam, and turning short throws into explosive gains when defenses overplay the run. On the outside, DK Metcalf demands safety help on every snap. Marquez Valdes-Scantling forces corners to respect the deep ball even when the target does not come. And Adam Thielen finds soft spots on third down like he has been doing his entire career. Behind them, you still have Roman Wilson and Scott Miller, ready to punish any coverage that forgets about them. At tight end, Darnell Washington and Jonnu Smith give Aaron Rodgers big, friendly targets while also helping in protection. None of this feels random anymore. Every touch looks like it has a purpose. The most important piece is how Arthur Smith has tied all of this together with Aaron Rodgers at the center. Instead of asking Aaron Rodgers to throw the ball 40 times and rescue broken drives, the Steelers are leaning into long marches that drain the clock, mix heavy personnel with spread looks, and put defenses in constant conflict. One series might feature 3 straight physical runs. The next might start with play action to DK Metcalf and a screen to Kenneth Gainwell, but the rhythm stays the same. Control, then strike. When you pair that kind of patient, punishing offense with a defense that is suddenly shutting down the run and flying to the football, you get a very different picture of this team. To really see how far they have come, you have to look at what has happened on the defensive side of the ball and why that unit has gone from being questioned to setting the tone for everything Pittsburgh wants to be. The funniest part about this Steelers defense is that the story everyone thought was finished is exactly where the plot flipped. Not long ago, this group could not get off the field. Missed fits piled up, and every stretch run looked like trouble. Then Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin stopped trying to patch leaks and changed the way the whole unit thought. They leaned less on pure man coverage, mixed in more quarters and zone looks, and asked the front to own gaps instead of chasing every motion. Suddenly, those long runs that embarrassed them early in the year started turning into short gains and obvious passing downs. You can feel the difference in the first drive of games now. The tone is set by pads, not by panic. Up front, the names tell you why offenses are no longer having fun. Keanu Benton anchors inside when he is available, Derek Harmon moves between the edge and the interior and wrecks blocking plans, and Cameron Hayward still wins the kind of one-on-one battles that change entire series. Behind them, Patrick Queen has cleaned up his game, reading keys faster, knifing through gaps, and playing with a calm that was not always there in his past stops. Peyton Wilson, his speed jumps off the screen when he is scraping to the sideline or closing on a swing pass. Add in Malik Harrison making big third down tackles and Alex Highsmith hurrying quarterbacks into rush throws, and you start to see why high-powered rushing attacks like Miami got stuck around 63 rushing yards instead of turning the night into a track meet. This is not one star carrying the load. It is a wall. The depth pieces matter just as much as the headliners. Jack Sawyer is rookie, not the most explosive athlete, but he sets the edge and sheds blocks like he has been in this system for years. When Nick Herbig misses time, Sawyer slides in, seals his side, and lets the linebackers flow. Even the way they rotate the front shows a new confidence. Different combinations of Derek Harmon, Cameron Hayward, Keanu Benton, and the young rushers keep the line fresh while the coverage behind them stays patient. Opponents see the old film of soft edges and open lanes, then run straight into a completely different reality. And if the front seven has flipped the script this hard, the real twist is what happened behind them in the secondary. Once Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar stepped into bigger roles and changed how this defense handles the air. If the front seven gave this defense its teeth, the secondary gave it a brain. The turning point was simple. Once Jalen Ramsey settled into this system, coverage stopped being about surviving matchups and started being about dictating them. Some snaps he is pressed outside on a top receiver, other snaps he is in the slot, squeezing space. Then he drops deep like a safety and closes on a throw that looked open for a heartbeat. Offenses come to the line trying to find him and still do not know what he is doing until the ball is snapped. Beside him, Kyle Duggar has turned into the hammer, who cleans up all the mess underneath, driving on crossers, filling alleys against the run, and making sure tight ends feel every catch. Together, they turn the back end from a soft spot into a trap. the ripple effect shows up in the rest of the room. Joey Porter Jr. still grabs too often, but when he trusts his length and feet instead of holding jerseys, you see why Pittsburgh believes he can become a true #1 corner. James Pierre used his opportunity before the injury to prove he is not just depth, jumping routes against Baltimore and staying glued in tight coverage when the pass rush did not get home. Brandon Echols quietly handled the thankless work inside, carrying slot receivers through traffic until he went down. And now Jalen Ramsey has slid into that nickel role whenever needed, without the group losing its edge. Behind all of them, Minkah Fitzpatrick keeps the whole shell tied together, reading the quarterback, adjusting angles, and erasing throws that would be easy completions for most defenses. There are no free windows anymore. Every route feels like it comes with a question mark. Even the tough decisions told you this unit was serious. When Deshaun Elliott went to injured reserve, the Steelers did not patch it with a stopgap. They went and trusted Kyle Duggar with real responsibility. When it became clear Darius Slay no longer matched the physical standard this scheme demanded, they moved on and handed those snaps to players who could run at the tempo this defense now expects. That choice was not about disrespect, it was about raising the bar. Now you have a secondary that disguises coverages, tackles in space, and feeds off momentum from the guys up front. Put that behind a pass rush that is heating up and pair it with Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the ball, and you start to see the real question forming. In a conference full of talented but unproven passers, what happens when the most experienced quarterback in the AFC playoff race has this kind of defense backing him in January? Every contender in the conference can talk about talent, but only one team walks into January with Aaron Rodgers under center, and that changes the entire equation. Most of the quarterbacks he will face are still building their stories, still figuring out how to handle a full stadium when every third down feels like a season on the line. Aaron Rodgers has lived that reality for more than a decade. He has won in freezing wind, in loud road stadiums, in games where one mistake ends the year. That history is not just a line on a resume. You can see it when the play clock is draining, the rush is closing in, and he calmly resets everyone with a signal that only his guys understand. And in those moments, experience is not a slogan, it is a weapon. You can feel the difference inside Pittsburgh because the fan base has lived the other side. They remember trying to talk themselves into playoff runs with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields, hoping that if the defense played out of its mind and the run game hit just right, maybe they could steal a game in Buffalo or Kansas City. That took mental gymnastics. This is the opposite. With Aaron Rodgers, the thought is simple. Give him a sturdy pocket, give him a defense that keeps the score in reach, and he will find windows that younger quarterbacks do not even see yet. When he hits a back shoulder to DK Metcalf on 3rd and long, or looks off a safety and drops a deep shot to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, it does not feel like a miracle. It feels like the exact reason you brought him here. That calm in big moments is the gap that no chart can fully capture. The tension now is not about whether Aaron Rodgers can handle the stage, it is about how much you risk to get him there at full strength. His wrist has taken hits. He has absorbed enough sacks this season, and if the division falls into Pittsburgh's hands before they even step on the field again, Mike Tomlin has a decision to make. Do you keep letting Aaron Rodgers slice through defenses to stay hot, or do you protect him from needless punishment and trust the rest of the roster to close out seeding? That choice does not just affect one Sunday, it shapes how the Steelers manage Mason Rudolph and young Will Howard. And it sets up a very different kind of conversation heading into Cleveland and Baltimore. This whole stretch comes down to one big decision point for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If the Packers beat the Ravens, Pittsburgh clinches the AFC North before even playing Cleveland, forcing Mike Tomlin to choose between resting key pieces or staying in attack mode. Health and depth shape that choice. Jalen Ramsey is cleared to play, Isaac Sumalo is out so Spencer Anderson starts at left guard, and Mason Rudolph is the realistic backup option if Aaron Rodgers sits or only gets a short tune-up. The real opportunity comes in Week 18, when a locked division and settled seeding could let 6th-round rookie Will Howard get a full week of starter reps and a full game against Baltimore, while Rodgers heals up for the playoffs. That scenario would give the Steelers both a fresh veteran for January and real tape on Howard, underlining how much this potential division title matters for the franchise's present and future, not just as another line on Tomlin's resume. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this season is about more than keeping a neat little streak alive. For Mike Tomlin, a division crown right now would hit completely different from 2020, and everybody in that city feels it. They have gone year after year hearing the same joke, that non-losing seasons do not matter when your last playoff win sits all the way back in 2016. Every time the team scratched into the postseason and bowed out early, that label grew heavier. This run with Aaron Rodgers, with a reshaped old locker room and a fan base that already watched the whole thing nearly fall apart in Buffalo, has a different edge. Winning the AFC North here would not just be another box checked. It would feel like proof that all the pain and patience since the end of the old era actually led somewhere real. A division title in this spot also changes the shape of the fight in January. Instead of packing their bags for a freezing road trip and hoping everything goes right, the Steelers would invite somebody else into Acrisure Stadium and make them deal with the noise, the cold, and a crowd that has been waiting almost a decade to explode for a playoff win again. You give Aaron Rodgers a home game with this defense behind him, and suddenly the field tilts. Drives feel longer for the other team, mistakes feel louder, and every third down becomes a test of whether that visiting quarterback can handle the moment, as well as a future Hall of Famer who has already lived through so many of them. It is the difference between sneaking into the tournament and walking through the front door knowing you earned your place at the table. That is why this potential AFC North banner is more than a hat and a t-shirt. It would be the first clear sign that this version of the Steelers is not just surviving seasons, it is building towards something that can last. It would tell players like Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, Patrick Queen, Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and TJ Watt that their careers in Pittsburgh are part of a new story, not just the long shadow of the past. And it would put the fan base on the spot in the best way. How high is the belief really? Is this just the year they finally get that one playoff win? Or is this the start of a run that could reset what people expect from Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers together? Before we talk about matchups and dream opponents, that is the question hanging in the air, and every viewer has to decide where they land on that confidence scale.